Perfect.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Going to put the Nearpod in the chat one more time. We are going to get started in a Nearpod. If you would like to go to join.nearpod.com and put in the 5-digit code that you see on my screen, that is going to be a way for us to get together as well. No worries either way. It will always live at the top of the screen. So anytime that you need to refer back to it, it will always be at the top. My name is Megan. I'm one of the product specialists here at Nearpod. You may have been in a session with my teammate Brittany just a few moments ago. And of course, I'm joined by our amazing teammate Danielle here as well. We are so excited to be here with you. Today, we are going to talk about, forgot to change that time down at the bottom. Sorry about that, y'all. We were just up in LA at NCTM. So use the background here, but change the font. So we're going to be talking about strengthening mathematical discourse with Nearpod Math. And I see in the names here a good variety of school placements and ages, age groups, grades, all of that good stuff. So I do want to make sure that we have some time to meet each other before we dig in. So would love to hear a little bit about you. Please feel free to join the Collaborate board, or if you are not and just simply want to put it in the chat, that is totally fine as well. I know that it's a great way for us to talk to each other on this Monday evening. It's coming up to the last session. So thank you so much for being here. If you are just joining a Nearpod for the first time, or if you have used Nearpod in the past, a Collaborate board is a great way to elevate that student voice that we're going to be talking about today, strengthening that discourse, while giving an opportunity for student feedback and teacher feedback as well. So I am not going to approve student posts. Feel free to come on in and tell us what grade level you teach, how long you've been teaching, where you teach, if that is most applicable, whatever feels good for you and however you want to share. Happy to see you. Yeah, Santa Ana, 6th grade. Wow, 23 years. Congratulations. You're amazing. Orange County. Okay, yes, 16 years. Still love it. 23 years now, you're the AP. Oh my goodness, 23 must be our lucky number. This is awesome. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much for coming in. If you're just joining us, the code to the Nearpod is 9ITX8. You can go to join.nearpod.com. And also, I believe that Danielle, my teammate here, is going to be putting it in the chat a couple of times. So feel free to come on in. Would love to hear a little bit about you, where you're from, any grade level that you're currently working with, and also how many years you've been in your role in education, in the classroom, whatever it is. We're going to give it just a few more moments before we get started on our session. So maybe 30 seconds to wrap on up. Love to hear. Awesome. 6 years. Middle school. Wow. Okay. Was middle school. And now you are kindergarten 5th. Awesome. About 10 seconds to get it in. If you are not able to join the Collaborate board in time, please go ahead and copy and paste it into the chat so you can all see it anyway. Santa Ana Unified. Awesome. Thank you so much. About 5 seconds to wrap up. We will have one more moment for discourse here in a few minutes before we get into our session. So going to transition the slide in about 3 seconds. But feel free to copy and paste in the chat if you don't make it. All right, would love to hear your familiarity with Nearpod Math. Nearpod Math is a separate program that we have inside of Nearpod. So maybe you're using Nearpod for your math classes currently, but Nearpod Math is brand new. So just go ahead and open up that little click here if you'd like to see a little bit more of it. Nearpod Math is our newest program. I'm going to toggle over to teachers. I'm going to hide student names and check on here. So we have a couple don't know anything, have heard some. Awesome. Very, very great. Love that. Okay, don't know anything about Nearpod Math. No worries, that's why we're here. That is great. Maybe some of you have been using Nearpod for a while, and this is the first time you're hearing about Nearpod Math. We will definitely set the stage for that before we jump into our session together, and we want to make the most of our time. So we will move quickly and with urgency, but go through everything that we can. Another, functionality here with our poll. This is our poll feature that we have, and we can always share with the class. This would be a really wonderful way to share that with that student discourse, right? Have that elevation of student voice, not only for the representations of A or B that they chose, but if I choose to share with the class, your screen should not be the screen that everyone is seeing of the pie chart here, right, of the different breakdown that we have. Awesome way to do some analysis, right? Data analysis right in the moment. What are we noticing? What are we wondering? So a quick way to assess that data and elevate that student voice already. Okay, awesome. Going to be moving on. If you didn't get a chance, no worries. So we're going to set the stage for Nearpod Math just super quickly. So Nearpod Math, as I mentioned, is our newest program. It is intended to be a supplemental resource designed to work in tandem with anything that you're currently using, whether that's a core curriculum, self-made lessons, any scope and sequence that you have. You'll notice here that something that I really struggled with when I was in the classroom, I taught elementary school, was that I had to go to a million different places, right? I had to go to this place for this manipulative and here for this and this worksheet here, and nothing talked to each other, and it was overwhelming and it was so time intensive. So with Nearpod Math, what we've done is we've consolidated to ensure that teachers have a one-stop shop for everything that they should need for math, as well as a cohesive experience for our students. So just in thinking about what we're going to see today, we're going to see an example of how we can strengthen student discourse in our math variety of ways that you'll see here. I'm going to annotate over just very quickly. If you've not used our annotate feature, another great way to highlight some things on the boards of students as we go through. So we have some problem-based lessons that we'll definitely take a peek at. We have some mini lessons that support that learning, 5 and 20-minute practice activities and sets. Of course, that gamification that we know and love. If you've used Nearpod, it's going to be that time to climb that your students get so excited for. We have 2 new interactive videos that we will definitely take a peek at, as well as some centers. Love our centers. Going to put a heart by that one. If you are an elementary teacher or a middle school teacher and use stations or centers before, they're going to speak to your heart. We have 4 virtual manipulatives that we will take a peek at, as well as some simulations with Geogebra. But of course, what good is all of this if we're not using data, right? So with Nearpod Math, we have this very robust, not only real-time insights, but also post-session reports that help us to make sure that we as educators are making the best decisions for our students, particularly with that math discourse. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. So just as a point, when we're coming into making sure that our students' voices are elevated, that we're highlighting our students' work, and also strengthening that discourse that they have with each other, there's a couple of features that I really want to make sure that we hone in on when we're particularly talking about Nearpod Math, but are relevant for all of our Nearpod in general features that we have. So one is going to be this live teacher dashboard. So first of all, very similar ways to what we saw earlier with that chart that I was able to share out with the students. We can share out students' work and modeling in real time. So really strengthening that discourse about highlighting an exemplar or even justifying a misconception, right? Maybe I join as a student, as a teacher on a student screen and make a mistake and have them evaluate my work. Or I'm live student modeling, I'm progress modeling for all of my students on the side here. And then of course, post-session reports to synthesize all of that data and make those informed decisions after. So just as a quick note, I can't help but say, some of you were at NCTM last week. We were also there. Brittany, my teammate who was just on earlier, and I were there. So I want to bring it back to this NCTM standard that we have here for the effective practice of teaching strategy with facilitating mathematical discourse, right? We're posing purposeful questions and also facilitating that discourse that's really intentional with our students, speaking to a lot of fluency and accuracy, able to explain and elaborate as well as clarify and encourage that argumentation, right? So really digging in on these philosophies as we come into Nearpod and how Nearpod Math can help to show those. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. So I know that we are in a variety of grades, we're in a variety of age groups. So I've pulled everything that I could from Nearpod Math to show that breadth. Nearpod Math is a K-8 supplemental resource. So it will be that really strong understanding for our kindergarten through our 8th grade material. But something to note is that everything in Nearpod Math is really intentionally designed without a grade level stamp. So never will your students be given material that you have found on the Nearpod Math website and given something that has that grade level stamp on it to indicate that they may be on, at, above, or below grade level. It is completely up to you, and it also is a really good feeling to meet our students where we're at. So just a quick note on that, but let's take a look. So when we saw one of those practice-based lessons that we noticed here in Nearpod Math, I'm going to show you where to find them, and then also how you can use those to facilitate that Discourse in Nearpod Math in your classrooms. So I'm just going to come over to Nearpod very quickly, showing a little vulnerability here. Mine's probably not as organized as yours is. But what you'll notice is that on the left-hand side, because I have a subscription to Nearpod Math, so not the Nearpod library, but Nearpod Math, our newest program, coming in, when I click, I notice that everything related to math now lives in here. So we have brought everything from the Nearpod library with that math tag into Nearpod Math. But I'm just going to very, very quickly show you where we're going to live in just a few moments. So you'll see we have kindergarten through 8th grade. Each one is parsed out by grade bands. I have a very strong understanding here. I'm just going to go into 3rd grade really quickly. Yes, I am playing favorites, but that's okay. I'll show you your grade level more than likely here in a few moments. But just coming very quickly, and we see these topics. These are going to be ways that you can see the information that is covered in 3rd grade. In particular, they will scope and sequence to standards in California with that California Common Core. So very comprehensive to understand where you are at. Coming just very quickly in, you'll see each one of these topics underneath. And then coming into one of our topics just very quickly, I'm going to show you this featured lesson or this problem-based lesson that we note here. So I'm going to show you an example of this in the lesson that we're going to go back to, but just a few moments to sort of pause and see where we're figuring out where this comes into play first. All I did was find a lesson that was aligned to a topic that is inside of this particular grade level, so 3rd grade. And already on the right-hand side, I see these instructional strategies. And all of these are going to be following this launch, explore, practice, and synthesize flow. But I already see on the right-hand side some opportunities for student discourse. I see partner discussion, right? I see class discussion. I see partner work. I see think, pair, share, a ton of ways for students to engage, not only with me as the teacher, but with each other. It's so much more fun when they're together, right? We're in these groups. So just as a quick note, you'll always see on the right-hand side of this featured lesson, the breakdown of these instructional strategies and where we have the elevation of student voice or that discourse that you would expect from mathematical practices. They will be highlighted on the right-hand side, and you can actually preview them in our slides. So let's take a look at one of them in action. So here's one of the 3rd grade. We're going to jump back into the Nearpod, and I know that we only have 15 minutes left. It's kind of hard to believe these are 30-minute sessions. There's so much that we could be doing, but I do want to make sure that we see very relevant to you how you can take Nearpod Math's lessons and start to use them to elevate student voice and to encourage that mathematical discourse. So back here, all I did was take one of these featured lessons. I hopped it into the Nearpod or popped it into the Nearpod here. And so here you'll see a 7th grade lesson on volume. Okay. Now remember, I promised you that you'd hopefully, I can't promise 100%, but see a grade level that resonates with you. So we were in elementary here, or upper elementary, here we're in middle school. I'll go down to lower elementary and we'll try to touch on everybody, but just as a note here, this is one of those featured lessons that we've taken, those problem-based lessons, and I wanted you to see it in action. We were able to preview it a few moments ago, but let's take a look at it. So here on your screen, we're on live participation. So as I move my screen, your slides should be moving. Anytime that I'm annotating or launching an activity or a video or a lesson, everything is reflective on your screen. So let's just take a peek, right? So here's some prior knowledge for teachers, some preparation, going through, really great stuff. But let's point out the essential question, of course, learning objectives. Here's that breakdown, right? So here is in real time what you're going to see in the time that we have together. Very similarly, as you notice on the right-hand side of the slide that we just saw, now it's represented inside of the Nearpod with that breakdown of the launch, explore, practice, and synthesize. And now we have this really great transition slide. So let's just take a quick look and see what we're going to be doing. So first, we have that independent think time here. We're talking about objects. Remember, we're talking about volume. Keep that in the back of your mind. So objects making up cubes. Here we have one of those polls again, where we can share out student data. Don't worry, we're not going to do this one. I just wanted to show you, but I can also model for the students first if I needed to, but let's get right into it. So after I give them independent think time, I can immediately have students start to use what we call our draw it to show me understanding, right? And not only can I, as the teacher, see who has started, but again, as I pop out what's going on my screen, I can see where I can start to identify misconceptions, talk about something more whole group, or pull a small group. As soon as we start to move forward, there's some annotation features, some places for me to come forward as the teacher, and then boom, a class discussion, right? So really strong scaffolded release of responsibility here, that gradual release as we have that independent think time to the model, now a class discussion as we're coming together. And each one of the slides that we have here in our launch always set up the lesson to make sure that students feel confident before going into that explore and practice. So let's take a look at our explore here. A couple of things to note. So we're going to explore comparing objects. I'm just going to highlight very, very quickly over here that we're following the same routine as we have that independent think time first. Now we have a think, pair, share, right? You could be a small group, a shoulder partner. But something to note is that just like when we're looking through all of our Nearpod Math slides, not every one of our top left static slides, meaning not an activity or a lesson or interactive video, has this tag. But when they do, they are asking for that strengthening of mathematical discourse. It's looking for student elevation of voice with that think, pair, share, turn and talk, class discussion, independent think time, then sharing with a partner. So just be on the lookout for these as we go through. So let's take another peek here. We have a think, pair, share, and then we move right into a class discussion, right? So a lot of room for that mathematical discourse. And then we go into our practice. Now, I'm not going to take too long in our practice and in our synthesize because I do want to make sure that we see some other grade levels, but just as a note, when we're looking at this particular draw it, and we're asking for a group work, right? So here's that another chance for students to be working with that elevation and that mathematical discourse that we want to make sure that we're supporting. When there is a piece that we're asking students to use as a manipulative or an external resource, we're always linking it as a digital resource. So it popped out for me, so I wasn't sharing my entire desktop, so you might not be able to see it, but if you were to open it on your screen, what it's going to do is take you, there we go, to a new tab that allows for this particular part to be the next part of the lesson. So it's not Google, right? We're not asking students to YouTube or Google anything independently. But here, as soon as students are using this digital connecting cube, each group member has a task. And then of course, on my teacher toggle, I can see who has started, right? So really strong understanding with that discourse that I can start to elevate or encourage for my students to have when we're starting to then build an order, right? So as soon as we're finished looking at the objects, now we're going to find the volume and order them. Okay, wanted to show you an example here of a lesson that we have in our 5th grade classroom of our mystery bag. So here afterwards, this is obviously coming back down a little bit, but again, I wanted to show you the breadth of Nearpod Math and strengthening mathematical discourse. So here is another problem-based lesson that we have. I've truncated it just ever so slightly, so we didn't have to scroll through so many of our slides, but here we'll notice that this is one of our mystery bags. I've just pulled out the launch and explore here. A couple of things to note. So we're setting the stage here with going fishing, building some context, obviously having that callback to students, but we're also asking for, again, with this one in particular being our open-ended question that we have. If we're asking for the answer here, I can always, as a poll, see the participation and then also students' answers and their names if I choose to as well. Afterwards, we have that class discussion. So again, having that really strong understanding, giving time for that mathematical discourse, and maybe even building in some of that. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Right? Giving them a chance to hear from each other, learn from each other, and have you as the facilitator. Coming into this launch, we're really setting the stage for the practice that comes next. And in our practice, what we're doing here is exploring a way to collect data. So the next couple of slides are going to give the opportunity to practice playing with a block game. You can either choose a physical bag or a digital bag that we have. And just coming through here, so very, very quickly, moving in here, if I'm giving directions, right, all of these are going to be present. And now we're letting students work in groups. So maybe this is a chance for me to do some of that circulation and give students a chance to work independently if they want to work independently, but pull them in a small group, put them in independent groups groups together, right? 2 or 3, but all the while really having this strong emphasis on them connecting to each other and having this discourse as a conversation amongst themselves with these mathematical practices, right? All the while analyzing this data for myself. So just coming in here with this practice, a couple of things to note. So here is this Geogebra lesson. If you're familiar with Geogebra, if you're not, it is that really awesome connection that we have in that upper middle school where geometry and algebra start to come together for our students, right? So here is one of them where I can start using this manipulative that is embedded inside of the Nearpod Math lesson to give them an opportunity to practice with creating this data piece. So now, as we have, as we see here, we can have, let me pull up the student pace here. I always have this as the dropout if I needed to refer back to the block game that we were just in. But also when we're completing the group work here, I can see, of course, on my teacher's side, who has started, who is still working, what's happening, any misconceptions that we have. And maybe this is a chance for me to even put on that student pace mode, right? If you've not used our student pace mode, now would be a great time to play around with it. When you're in a Nearpod, if you have launched it initially as a student or as a teacher pace, excuse me, as a teacher pace lesson, you can toggle on the student pace lesson part and just, pull out a couple of slides for students to work through, and you can really clearly see what students are doing on your side while also identifying some misconceptions or areas for work or some highlight of some really awesome student work while they work independently across some of our slides as well. Okay, so just as a quick note, we're gonna end this one here with this class discussion, right? So we started, building that context, having that schema building before with the game, setting up the game as a group work, and now coming back to a whole class discussion. So really getting a strong understanding of where students are, not only in their play-based group work here, but also strengthening that discourse of agree and disagree and what I notice, what I wonder, setting those really strong routines for mathematical discourse, while also, of course, encouraging that elevation of student voice. Okay, so a couple of other ways that Nearpod Math is really honing in on and strengthening that mathematical discourse that we have for our students are going to be, as I mentioned just a few moments ago before we jumped into this lesson, 2 of our interactive videos. So here are 2 brand new interactive videos that are exclusive to Nearpod Math. One of them is going to be this top left. This is Math in Action, and this is only going to be in grades 6 through 8. So if you come into Nearpod Math and you're trying to find these for your 3rd grade lesson, bummer for me too, but it's not going to happen. I'm sorry, not yet. So Math in Action is going to be in 6th through 8th grade, but our Oh Now I Get It is in grades K through 8. So the difference is going to be that Math in Action is going to very clearly state at the beginning. So you're learning about this topic. So for example, dividing fractions, right, in your math class, and you want to know, how is this going to help me in the real world? And we go on to show you how this is helpful to you in the real world as a student. Oh, now I get it. Obviously, when you think about it, we want our students to say, oh, now I get it, right? We want them to have the really clear light bulb moment. Okay, so let's just take a peek at one of these for the sake of time. We have 5 more minutes. I want to make sure that we also see some of our virtual manipulatives that also encourage that student discourse that we can share out to others. So we're just going to take a quick peek here. I'm going to pull up a kindergarten video that we have actually, because I want us to, I'm going to come here. I want us to see how we can see this in our classrooms across, right? So we've seen 3rd, we've seen 5th, we've seen 7th. Let's talk about kindergarten. So we're going to play just very, very quickly. The first part of this, hit that first stopping point. You see these blue dots. These are stopping points for questions. And this is a chance for me to facilitate more of that mathematical discourse, right? So here we go.
In math and in life, we can learn a lot from our mistakes. Let's check out one together about counting objects.
Huh? What? Oh, now I get it.
Jaden and Amina are playing with some teddy bears. We have 8 teddy bears, says Jaden. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, Jaden, we have 5 teddy bears.
Okay, so even just here right now, right, we're already asking students to argue, argumentative, not right, argue each other, but think about how we can push each other and challenge each other. One person says there's 8, one person says there's 5. When we get to this question point, we ask who is correct, right? We are asking for students to think about others' work, have that strong mathematical discourse, not only with their own work, but what with other students are using. So here's an example of one of our kindergarten lessons. For just the sake of time, I'm going to progress just really quickly. There's 2 more things that I wanted to do, but we'll pick one of them. As I mentioned, we have our centers. We won't get a chance to see those here in a few moments, but I do want to make sure that we see our virtual manipulatives. We have 4 of them. We have algebra tiles, base 10 blocks, color tiles, and fraction tiles. I can, as a teacher, really hone in on that mathematical representation, but also with that strengthening the discourse that we have around mathematical representations, share out screens with the class. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Here with this live teacher modeling that you'll see down here in the bottom right, this is what we're going to see next. So here's an example here of first grade work. I'm going to hide student names. I can come into the student model and start to use some of these blocks, right? Come build out 10 of them automatically. I can see this is a really strong understanding for my students. But as a teacher, as soon as students start to work, I can push out with the class, right? I can share with the class. So your screen is going to stop unless you are this student. And we can see what's happening in real time. Awesome, right? I can talk and highlight. I can highlight a misconception. We can agree, we can disagree, but all of these moments happen with this share with class of that live student modeling. Okay, y'all, I'm so sorry that we didn't get to see our centers and have time for everything. But I just wanted to round out with a really great thank you for everything that you've done. I'm going to pull up the fraction tiles just here really quickly for us to just have a quick moment to play around with. So as we sort of, round out our time together, I would love for you to be thinking about how you can use Nearpod Math, whether it's a virtual manipulative or a interactive video, one of those lessons that build in that mathematical discourse partition here with a think, pair, share, a group work, a partner work, an independent think time, anything that you would like. Just thinking about how you as a teacher can start to use Nearpod Math in a way that feels most meaningful to you. So as we round out today, thank you so much for your time. I know we have exactly 1 minute left, so I'm going to put us into our collaborate board to end our time. So thank you for joining. And if you have any questions or anything as we end our time together, would love to hear anything that you're thinking around Nearpod Math and facilitating and strengthening that student discourse around mathematical practices. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's late in our Pacific time here. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Yes, love our manipulatives too. If you're interested in learning more about Nearpod Math or would like to get a free trial for Nearpod Math, please do be in touch with Danielle or me so that we can make sure to give you those resources. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Yes.